Welcome to the Brass and Woodwind shop. In my shop right now I have an instrument that has a brace that broke, and when there's a brace that breaks you need a stronger solder joint to hold this together. So I'm going to silver solder this together, and the silver solder is a lot stronger than the soft solder. Be sure to watch my video Introduction to Silver Soldering, and I will put the link in the description below. That video gives a lot of background and information about silver soldering, but on this video I'm just going to silver solder this back together. When you use silver solder on a solder joint, you need to get the heat up to about 1300 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's about 700 degrees Celsius. And that will burn any of the lacquer or any other soft solder joints in the area. So first of all you need to take the part off of the instrument, which I've already done, and then you need to clean up all of the soft solder in the area. On this brace there's a lot of soft solder on both sides of the flanges, and I need to clean that off all the way before I silver solder this together. I'm going to heat up the soft solder until it melts and then wipe it off with a cloth. Whenever you work on solder, make sure you wear safety glasses and also use all the other safety precautions. When you clean up soft solder, take a t-shirt type material and make sure that it's at least 2 layers thick, and wrap it around your finger and heat up the flange, and when you see it melt, then you wipe it off. And if you get some of it on the rag, then go to a different spot, a clean spot on the rag, and do it again. And then you do that until all the solder is off, or at least most of the solder. There still is an extremely thin layer of soft solder on this, and I'm going to buff that off. But I'm going to do the other half of the brace first. Then I'm going to turn that around and do the other side of that brace. I have the buffing wheel on the bench motor, and I'm going to use that to finish cleaning up the soft solder on the flanges. For more information on buffing, look in the description below for the link to the Information to Buffing video. Take the buffing compound, put that on the wheel, and get the inside of the brace. Then turn it around and get the other part of that. Still a little more on there. You need to get all of the soft solder off, because if you don't, the soft solder is going to flow around when it gets to temperature, and then when it gets superheated it's going to crystallize, and it will make a big mess that you do not want to have to clean up. I'm going to make sure that all of the soft solder is off. This one is done. Now I'm going to do the other one. This is a small piece, but I probably can hold on to it with my hands. If you cannot hold on to this with your hands, you can hold on to it with the pliers and buff it that way. And then when you're done buffing the one side, just turn it around and buff the other side. Now I'm going to do this part of the flange. Also, there's some soft solder on the other side where the little part attaches to the other flange, and that needs to be buffed off too. I found the brace, and that happens sometimes where the buffing wheel gets a hold of it and throws it to the ground, but I found it and I'm going to continue buffing. I'm all done cleaning off the solder, and these are ready to be silver soldered together. This is the very unusual instrument that this brace goes on. Now I'm going to put these two parts of the braces on the instrument to see how they line up. I want to make sure that it is soldered together the right way. Okay, this flange needs to get turned around. Okay, that looks like how it needs to go on there. I'm going to take a poker and mark these so that I know how they line up, so that when I go to solder it together, I solder it up at the right angle. I want to make sure that I line these two flanges up the right way, so that when I go to solder it back together, it goes together correctly. This unusual looking tool is called a solder jig, and it's used to hold parts of the instrument when you're soldering them together. And you put them in the little clamps, and you line them up. And remember, I made the little marks on the two parts of the brace so that I know how to line them up. So I'm going to line up those two marks that I made. I have the brace lined up, and there are two different ways I can solder it. I can put the solder in from this side in between the brace, or if I turn it around, there's a hole where these two parts go together, so I can also get at it from the back of the one flange. The job will probably look better if I get at it from the back of the flange, so that's the way I'm going to do that. This is high temperature flux used for brazing and silver soldering, and I'm going to put some of that around where the joint is, and I'm going to put it on both sides. The high temperature flux will not evaporate at the high temperatures. This is going to be heated to a very high temperature, so if it does fall, which does happen sometimes, I want to make sure that it's not going to land on anything that's going to start on fire, and I especially want to make sure it's not going to land on me. So I have a piece of fireproof metal that it's not going to burn through. If you are going to silver solder, make sure you use all of the precautions, especially safety glasses. This is an acetylene torch, and the oxy-acetylene torch works better on this job, but I do not have one of those, so this is the best torch that I have, and it will work to do this job. Usually when I'm soft soldering, I have the flame like that, but since I'm silver soldering, I'm going to heat it up a lot hotter. And this has a bigger flame, so you need to be careful with what's behind it and around you while you're soldering. Now I'm going to heat this up. If this were a soft solder joint, the soft solder would already be melted. But okay, you can see that the metal is red. The flange goes up to temperature a lot faster than the little bar that is behind it. So what I'm going to do is heat it from both sides, from behind and in front. Oh, and you can see the solder melting and flowing. I just want to make sure I get it over the whole place where it needs to be gotten. Okay, and that's good. There's the solder joint, and I did get a little too much solder on there. It's not one of the best solder joints I've ever done. Since this melts at such a high temperature, I cannot heat and wipe this with a cloth, so I'm going to have to file that or grind it down. If I turn this over, you can see that the solder made its way to the other side of the flange too. Also, you can see that the metal has been discolored, and that's because it got tarnished. So I'm going to buff this up to make it look nice, and then I'm going to have to file or grind down the excess silver solder so that the brace can fit on the instrument well. Now I'm going to use the grinding wheel to clean off some of the excess solder. Now I'm going to finish cleaning it up with one of my small files. I'm done cleaning up the excess solder, and also you need to clean up the flux because the flux hardens onto there when you heat it up. Now I'm going to go back to the buffing wheel and clean off all the tarnish. Now the brace is put back together and it's ready to be soft soldered onto the instrument. But that is for another video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe for more band instrument repair videos.